Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Eunice. In this video, I'm going to be teaching us how to make this beautiful, simple gown. This gown is a straight gown from the shoulder to this point is straight, and then the down part we have two steps gathers, and it also has a basic sleeve with flare at the hem of the sleeve, and this is exactly what we have to at this side of the sleeve. And you can see this beautiful decoration I have here. I use my Ankara to create these beautiful gathers we have here, that's adding beauty to this gown. Can you see how beautiful it is? I hope this is something you're interested in learning. If this is it, make sure to keep on watching till the end. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, kindly click on that subscribe button to subscribe and ensure to put on your notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. So let's get right into the video. Okay, our gown is going to be a combination of these two fabrics, and this is a black crepe fabric. I have 1.5 yard here, and this is an African print fabric, also known as Ankara. This is also 1.5 here. I'll be using this for the two steps gathers at the hem, and also the flare we'll have at the sleeve, and then the center front gathers. So right now to start drafting, I'm going to fold my fabric into four. We're going to be drafting for the front and back together. So as you can see, my fabric is folded into four. So this open part you see here is going to be our side, and this part that I'm touching is the center front and center back. So to determine the amount of fabric I folded, I used the biggest circumference, which is the hip, and I divided it by 4 and added 2 inches to the measurement, which is 2 inches is for my sewing allowance, okay? So here my fabric that is folded, I have about 13 inches. The next thing I'm going to do is to mark the length of the gown. The length of this gown is 40 inches. I'll be subtracting the gathers, the length of the gathers from the full length. So, and the length of the long gathers is going to be 8 inches. So I'll subtract 8 from 40, and that will leave us with 32 inches. So I'll mark 32, and you can see I added half inch to that measurement. This is for joining the down part. So here the entire length I have is 32.5 inches. That's plus the half inch I'm going to use to join the gathers. Right now, I'm going ahead to mark the chest line from shoulder to waistline, and then from shoulder to hip line. As you can see, we already have the full length of the black crepe fabric here already. So here from the center front, I'm going to mark half of the shoulder measurement plus half inch for joining the sleeve. And the shoulder measurement I'm working with is 15 inches. When you divide 15 by 2, that will give you 7.5 plus half inch, and I marked on 8 inches. At the shoulder measurement, I came down by 1 inch for our shoulder slant. And right now, I'm marking the neck width of 4 inches. So I'll connect from the neck width to the shoulder slant of 1 inch I came down by on the shoulder line. So on the chest line, I'm going to also mark the shoulder measurement, which is half of the shoulder measurement plus half inch for joining the sleeve. So I'll mark on the chest line, and then I'll connect it to the shoulder line like this. So having done that, the next thing I'm going to do is to draw our armhole curve. So to draw the armhole curve, I'm going to get the midpoint of this line. That's from the shoulder slant to the chest line. I'll get the midpoint. At this midpoint, I'll first go in by half of an inch. And this is going to be for the back armhole. I haven't gone in by half of an inch. I'll connect it back to the shoulder tip like this. And then to curve it to the chest line, on this chest line, I'm going to enter a quarter of the bust measurement. And the bust measurement divided by 4 is 9 3/4. I marked it there on the chest line. And then I'll use my armhole curve to connect it like this. So still on the midpoint of this armhole, I'll go in by 3/4 of an inch. Now this is for the front armhole. I'll connect it also back to the shoulder tip just like this, and then I'll also curve it to meet the bust measurement on the chest line. So right now we have our front armhole and our back armhole. So I'll go ahead and enter all my horizontal measurements. So on the chest line, you can see I already have the bust measurement divided by 4, and then I'll add 2 inches for my sewing allowance. 1 inch is my sewing allowance, and then 1 inch is for ease. So that's a total of 2 inches. On the waistline, I entered quarter of the waist measurement plus 2 inches. On the hip line, I'm repeating the same thing, quarter of the hip measurement plus 2 inches also. And then at the hem here, which is the full length here, I'm going to enter exactly what I have on the hip line. I'll bring it down there. So which is quarter of the hip measurement plus 2 as well. I'm going to use my straight ruler to connect the points just like you can see me doing. So having connected the points, I'm just going ahead to blend up all the sharp points. Next, I'll go ahead and mark the back neck depth first. The back neck depth, I'll be using a neck depth of 1.5 inches. I'll connect it to the neck width of 4 inches, which I already have on the shoulder line. So this is me drawing out our back neckline. Next is the front neckline. So placing my tape from the shoulder line, I'll come down by 6 inches. That's how deep I want the front neckline to be. And then I'll also connect it to the neck width we have here. So this is it. So now we're done with our drafting. I'll go ahead and cut out on the back because the back is higher than the front. So we'll cut out on all the back and separate the front from the back before cutting the front neckline and the front armhole. As you can see, I'm done cutting the back. So I'm separating the front from the back. So we can now cut our front armhole and our front neckline. Okay, now we have our front piece and our back piece. The next thing we're going to do now is to cut the gathers that will be at the down part. So I'm going to measure what I have here at the hem, and I have 26 inches in front, and I also have the same 26 inches at the back. So I'm going to multiply 26 inches by 2.5. So you can do by 2 or by 3 depending on how much fabric you have. So for me, I'm multiplying 26 by 2.5, and that gave me 65 inches. So, and that's the same thing I'm also going to have for the back, because we're going to cut our gathers for the front separate and the back separate also. Then the next thing is the length. The length of our gathers is going to be 8 inches. Remember I said that the full length of the gown is 40, and here on the black fabric we have 32 already. So we are left with 8 inches. So 8 inches is what we are looking for, plus hemming allowance of 1.5 at the down part, and then half inch for joining it. So that's a total of 10 inches. So this is my Ankara fabric already cut out, and the second gathers I made it 5 inches shorter than the main, that's than the longer one. So but the width is 65 for all 4 of them. The only difference is their length. Okay, so I'll set my fabric aside and bring in the fabric we'll be using to cut our basic sleeve. So here I'm folding my fabric into 4. To determine the amount of fabric to fold into 4, you need to use the armhole, which is the biggest measurement for the sleeve, to determine the amount of fabric to fold. So having done that, I drew my starting line. So from the starting line now, I'm going ahead to mark the cap's height. And the cap's height of my client is 4 inches. So I'll straighten out this line. Next, I'm marking the length of the sleeve, which is 13 inches. The sleeve goes from the shoulder tip to the elbow. And then I added half inch for joining the flare part. And then from this cap side line, I'll come down by 2 inches. At this 2 inches point I came down by is where I'm going to enter the upper round arm measurement. So now the second line, which is the cap side line, I'm going to mark the armhole measurement there. And then I'll connect with a slanted line to the shoulder, that's to the starting point. And then I'm going to get the midpoint of this line. You can see the slanted line. I'll get the midpoint. Having gotten the midpoint, I will also get the midpoint of the down part. Can you see how I'm placing my tape? So the midpoint of the down part and the midpoint of the upper part of this line. So now we have the up and down of our sleeve. So at this upper part, I'll go up by ½ inch, and the down part, I'll go down by ½ inch. So I'm going to connect these points, these 3 points I just pointed at together now. That's from the apex of the sleeve to the midpoint and then to the main midpoint. And then I'll connect from the midpoint now to the down part like this. You can see the way I turned my sleeve. So if you don't really understand this, I'll be dropping the link to the video on how to create or how to draft a basic sleeve pattern. It's just a basic sleeve. So on the second line, which is the upper arm line, sorry, I entered half of the round upper arm. I entered it at this point, and I did the same thing at the elbow, and you can see I added my 2 inches sewing allowance. So I'm going ahead to connect the points like this. That's after adding my 2 inches sewing allowance. So this is what our basic sleeve looks like. You can see I didn't connect it straight. I used the curved part of my pattern master so that it gives us that nice fit. So right now we're done with our basic sleeve. I'm just going ahead to cut it out. So after cutting out our sleeve, the next thing to do is to measure what we have at the hem of the sleeve. This will determine the amount of fabric we're going to gather to the sleeve. And because this sleeve, that's the flare on the sleeve, I don't want it to be as full as what we have at the down part. I'm going to multiply 16 by 2, and that gave me 32 inches. So 32 inches is going to be the width of the fabric we'll gather at the hem of our sleeve. So on my leftover fabric, I'm marking 32 inches here, and then I'm going to fold into 2. I'm folding about 6 inches into 2. This is because the length of the flare is going to be 4.5 plus 1 inch for hemming allowance and then ½ inch for joining the down part. So that's a total of 6 inches. So having folded 6 inches, I'll go ahead and cut out my fabric. The width is 32 inches, the length is 6 inches. So I'll cut it out, and then I'm going to slash them into 2 because this is for both sleeves. So I'll slash into 2. One will be for the left and then the other will be for the right. And this is what we have here. So all I need to do is to fold in ½ inch on the down part, ½ inch, ½ inch, and stitch it and run my gather stitch at the upper part. Now to create the gathers we're going to have at the center front. So I noticed that the vertical length of my fabric is not as long as the horizontal side. So this side is longer. I'm going to use this side. So I'll place my fabric on fold, and I need 2.5 inches on fold. So I'm just confirming, and I have my 2.5 inches on fold. I'll cut it out. So actually the length of this fabric now is about 16 inches so that I can gather it to the center front. So I'll place this fabric on fold like this. Just watch what I'm doing. I'll fold it into 2, and then I'm going to stitch on ½ inch at the opened part. I'll stitch on ½ inch at the open part, and then I'll show us how to close the hem because we're not going to be leaving this hem open. So I'll stitch on the center front first and show us how to close the hem. And the next thing we're going to be doing is to cut our facing for both the front and the back. So here I already cut out the back facing. I'll be using the front to show us how to cut the facing. So first you fold your fabric into 2 like this and press down the folded part. Having done that, I'll bring in my front piece and then fold into 2. You want to make sure that the center front of the gown is aligned with the folded parts of the fabric we'll be using for the facing. So this is me just making sure to press it down well. And then next, I'll go ahead and trace out the shoulder stand and the neckline, just like you can see me doing. So you want to make sure that everything is equal. You trace it out correctly. That's why you must make sure that the folded parts are aligned. So I'll take off the front piece and just curve it to give it this rounded shape. So it can either be rounded or whatever shape you want to give it. I always like to use this rounded shape. And this is what our front facing looks like. I'll place it on the right side of the fabric and then stitch around the neckline and turn it to the wrong side. Now the next thing we're going to do is to cut our pockets. We have different ways of cutting pockets. This is one of the methods. So I'm going to be using this method because my fabric is quite small. So you can see I placed my palm open on my piece of fabric that I folded into two. I'm just curving it out to give it this shape. You want to make sure that it's big enough to carry your hand. So you can see I didn't trace out exactly where my palm stopped. I gave it about a space of about 2 inches round, and this is what we have. So here I'm cutting out two pieces. This is going to be for one side of the pocket. So I'll need to place this fabric and cut out another two pieces so that we can have the other side of our pocket. So I'm just placing it on my fabric and I'll cut out the same thing. So at this point, I have hemmed the down part of the fabric for the gathers and I did the same thing. And then I stitched the short one and the long one together. I stitched them together and then I ran a loose stitch at the upper part. I gathered my loose stitch to 26 inches, which is what we have at the hem of our gown. And you see, so I have 26 inches here. So I'm going to place this on the right side of the hem of our gown and then stitch it down using the half-inch seam allowance. Of course, you can see I did the same thing for the second piece. So we're going to repeat the same thing for the back. And this is our gathers for the sleeve that we're going to be using to form the flare at the sleeve area. I also gathered it to 16 inches, which is what I have at the hem of my sleeve. So I'm going to place the gathers right side of the gathers facing right side of the sleeve, and I also stitch on half-inch at the hem. Okay, for this small fabric we'll be stitching to the center front. I've stitched the open side close. So I'll bring that stitched part to the middle and then I'll close up one of the sides and turn it out to the right side. I'll just close up one of to the side and turn it out to the right side and give it a very good press. Then I'm going to gather it to 8 inches, which is going to be the length of our gathering that we'll have in front. I'll gather it to 8 inches. So as you can see, I've stitched the gathers to the down part of our gown and I've repeated the same thing for the back. Now this is the center front placed on the table and you can see I've already run a loose stitch on my fabric that will be placing at the center front. Okay, I turned it out from one side. So the part that I stitched close is the part that is going to be at the down part. So now measuring from the neckline, I came down by 8 inches at the center front. So I'm going to make sure that my gathers is up to that 8 inches I have there. So I created this mark so that I can have a straight base there. So now I'll pin this fabric to this center front. So this straight line will actually help me so that the base of our gathers is straight. So I'll pin this point here. And then I'm going to make sure that the upper part aligns with the neckline. And then I'll also use my pin to secure it at this point. And you see that? So this is me just arranging my gather as well. So I'll take this to my sewing machine. Then I'll run a stitch at the middle, at the center here. Okay, I'm done running the stitch at the middle. So I'm going ahead to take out my gather thread after removing the pins I used to secure it. And this is what we have here at the center front. You can see it came out really beautiful. So now the next thing we're going to do is to sew our pockets to the side of the gown. So these are my two pockets. We need two for one side and two for the other side. So from the shoulder line, from the highest point of the shoulder, I'm going to come down by 16 inches. So this totally depends on the height of the person you are making the outfit for. So this person is not on the tall side, so I'm coming down by 16 inches. For a tall person, you can do 18 inches. So her waistline is exactly at 16 inches. So I want this pocket to start from the waistline. So that's why I marked on 16 inches. And then you can see I notched the 16 inches point so that it reflects on the other side. I'm also doing the same thing for the back. I'll fold it into two. You can see me aligning their armholes together and then I'll notch exactly at that 16 inches point, so I know where my pocket is starting from. So having done that, now the next thing we're going to do is to place the pockets from the notch part of this 16 inches. I'll place the pocket on the right side. So you know this pocket has a curved part and it has a straight part. So it's the straight part I'm placing off from the 16 inches. So I'm repeating the same thing on the other side. You can see the straight part, I'm placing it from this 16 inches, and then I just follow the shape of the gown, and this is what we are going to have. I'll repeat the same thing for the back. I'll place the pocket also on the right side of the back and pin at from the 16 inches notch I have. I'll repeat the same thing on this side. Then I'm going to stitch on half inch. I stitch the pocket on half inch on all the four sides. You see? I'll stitch on half inch on this side. I'll repeat on the other side, and then for the front as well. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to place my facing also on the right side. Then I'll stitch on half inch round the neckline. I'll repeat the same thing for the back, and then I'll come back and show us. So as you can see, I'm done stitching my facing, and I went ahead to notch the neckline. So this is me now going ahead to press the facing. So you can see I flip the facing now to the wrong side, and I'm giving it a very nice press to make sure the neckline is relaxed. So this is exactly what I'm going to do for the back as well. I'm going to iron the facing to the wrong side after notching it, and then I'll go ahead and join the shoulders together. After joining the shoulders together, I'm going to sew my basic sleeve to the armhole, and then I'll show us how to shape this gown. Okay, after stitching our sleeves, before we go ahead and couple our gown, I'm placing hemming gum under my facing. This is to keep the facing intact so that it's not coming out on the right side of the outfit. And you can see that I've done the same thing for the front and back facing. You can see our facing is well relaxed. So now to shape our gown, this is what I'm going to do. Remember that our stitching allowance, our sewing allowance, it was 2 inches, and I said 1 inch was for ease, and then 1 inch is the actual sewing allowance. So I'm going to mark 1 inch on the sides of this gown. So I've marked 1 inch on the chest line, then on the waistline here I'm marking the same 1 inch. So here on the waistline where I have the pocket, I will come down by half of an inch where the pocket starts from. So from where the pocket starts from, I'll come down by half inch. So having come down by half inch, I'm going to connect the 1 inch I have on the waistline to the chest line. So now where the pocket ends, I will go up by half of an inch from where the pocket ends. So at this half inch mark I've marked here, I'm going to mark 1 inch, which is my side seam allowance. And then at the hem, at the knee area where the gathers connect, I'll mark 1 inch and connect it to the other 1 inch I have at the hip line here. So now this half inch I have here, you can see I'm going ahead to curve it into the pocket. This is so that your pocket, the beginning and the end of your pocket does not show from the outside, okay? So that's why we have this half inch mark. So on the sleeve opening here, which is the elbow, I'm going to connect with 1 inch as well from the chest line. And then I'll mark it all the way to the hem of the flare. Okay, after marking, I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and start stitching from the sleeve, and then I'll curve it into the pocket following the mark I have here. You can see exactly the way I marked it. That's how I'm going to stitch, and then curve in at the side where I have the pocket. So we'll leave the pocket area open. You can see there's no mark there. So this is so that your hand can go into the pocket. Of course, I'll repeat the same thing on the other side of the gown. Then I'll weave it and give it a very nice press. Then wear this dress on the mannequin so that we can see the final outcome. Okay, so here is the final outcome of our gown, and you can see it came out really beautiful. I enjoyed making this video and I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something. If you did, please make sure to like this video, share this video with your friends, and also do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Ensure to put on your notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.